Hello everyone, I just wanted to do a quick video here, kind of a plug for an album that didn't fully get everything that it should have gotten in terms of notoriety. It's the latest Van Morrison album that came out in 2019 called Three Chords and the Truth. Now, like many aging rockers, musicians, a lot of times these artists' later material isn't given any respect, to quote Rodney Dangerfield, from the media, the critics. People say that Bob Dylan was done after the 1970s, that the 80s ruined Bob Dylan, that there was nothing after 1980, 81 after Infidels. And of course, Van Morrison falls into the same trap with the critics. He put out some albums in the 90s that weren't well received. He put out some early 2000s albums that weren't, considered great. And, of course, when you look at an artist like Van Morrison, who's one of my favorites, I mentioned him in my first episode, and in my rankings video, his album Astral Weeks is in my top 10. Van has really been on a creative high these last 5 or 7 years. He went through a phase, he's really still in it. The pandemic's kind of slowed him down some. He didn't release any album in 2020. But he's one of these that you can rely on the fact that he's probably going to put out an album, at least one every year. And he did some albums a couple of years ago, where there was a time that he put out 3 or 4 albums in like 2 years. I'm always thinking about these new artists, that go 5 years between their debut album and their sophomore album. One that comes to mind, and not to bash this musician, I like his stuff, but his Hozier. He had the song "Take Me to Church," and he had other songs. That's not his best song, but we won't go into that. But it felt like years between his first and second album, and he's only done 2 albums. And these guys like Van Morrison, he's in his 70s, and he's rolling through albums. I mean, he's putting out 10 albums a decade, or more. But anyway, he falls into the trap with the critics of not being recognized for his later material. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, his stuff is stale, it's slow, it all sounds the same. But Van admits to plagiarizing himself, and to me, I think that's the mark of a true artist, where you've developed your own style enough to plagiarize it. I mean, people don't look at Van Gogh or Picasso. They don't. I mean, they look at them as like being in phases. Like Picasso had his blue phase. He was stuck in a stylistic type. But when musicians do it, they are considered, to be plagiarizing themselves. And that kind of goes against like the folk tradition of music, where you build off of what's already been created, and part of the creation process is by adding your own spin on something that's already been done. A prime example of that is actually the last song on this album, potentially my favorite. It's called Days Gone By, and he actually credits it in the liner notes as a traditional tune. It uses the same melody as Auld Lang Syne, the traditional New Year's song, but Van's made it like this 6-minute long epic closing song, which really it's really kind of, it's a heartwarming song. He wants to take a cup of kindness for the sake of Days Gone By, and it makes it a new song, but it's got that familiarity to it with it being Auld Lang Syne's melody. But to this album in particular, and I'll probably talk about some other later Van Morrison albums, because that's when I started getting into Van. It was really starting with his later catalog. and kind of working my way back. But this album, Three Chords and the Truth, it's his last studio effort so far. He released a few singles in 2020. I won't get into those, but you can look at them on your own time. Not his best work, but again, you can look at that at your own pace. But so this is his last studio effort. For about a dozen songs or so on it. And it actually has a guest spot by Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers. Of course, who's saying You've Lost That Love and Feeling, Unchained Melody. He's the surviving member of the original two Righteous Brothers. He's on the second track called Fame Will Eat the Soul, which is kind of like a new Van Morrison take on Hotel California, but with a very soulful duet with Bill Medley. But back to Van copying himself, you listen to these songs, and a lot of it takes you back to his Astral Weeks period. Not a lot, but several of the musicians on this album were actually Astral Weeks players. I think the guitarist was, and you can really hear, especially the opening song, which is also in the running for my favorite, potentially in my top, maybe not top 10, but definitely top 20 favorite Van Morrison songs. It's called March Winds in February, and it's very, it's very Van Morrison. I mean, it's a classic Van Morrison line, classic melody. Dark Night of the Soul, that's another one. It's kind of along the same lines as Tupelo Honey. Why Must I Always Explain, from his album Hymns to the Silence. It's just a really, I mean, I can't really get into it without you hearing it. I recommend this album, Three Chords and the Truth. The second to last song before Days Gone By is called Bags Under My Eyes, which is kind of Van saying that he's still singing for his bread on the road, and he's tired. It's aged him, but he's still got to go out there and sing music. Another Van, just kind of going at this haphazardly. The song "Does Love Conquer All?" That melody you've heard like in Van songs in his catalog, but I mean it's just one of those albums where, in my opinion, and one day I will rank my favorite Van Morrison albums. And I said when this album came out, I said that might be my favorite Van album. Astral Weeks, of course, that's the classic Van Morrison album. Moondance is up there, but this one, I mean, this holds its own. I mean, it's got that early '70s Van Morrison feel to it. Plus, he's got guests like Bill Medley on it. So anyway, I definitely recommend this album. Like I said, I'm a little late to the party with reviewing it. This isn't really a review, but it's just I listened to it tonight and I thought, man, it's such a good album. I've got to let more people know about this album. So if you've heard it, let me know. If you're thinking about purchasing it, I'm honored that I've given you a little push to go ahead and purchase that album, which I would recommend. Just a fantastic album. It's Van in top-notch form, even in his mid-70s. So definitely check out Three Chords and the Truth, Van Morrison, 2019. I look forward to hearing what y'all think of it. Take care.